The World Economic Forum has been measuring the gender gap for the last 11 years, and the report looks at education, health, economic participation, and political empowerment gender gaps. And we find that there are only 5 countries in the world that have closed over 80% of their gender gap, but even the number 1 ranking country has closed only about 87% of it. So even the top country in the world has some way to go to close that gap fully. And at the bottom end of the rankings, countries like Pakistan and Yemen have closed just over 50% of their gender gap, so a long way to go. The United States is at 45 this year, falling from 28 last year, but it's actually really been on a downward trajectory for the last decade or so. And that's not because there hasn't been progress. It has been improving relative to itself over the last decade, but because other countries are moving forward faster, it's just continuously falling in their rankings. And mainly that is because the US has one of the biggest pools of educated, high-skilled women, and yet when it comes to integrating them in the workforce, it's just simply not doing as well as many other advanced economies. So the rate of change has just been slowing down in the last 3 to 4 years in particular, and there's 3 things that are happening. One is we're still feeling the repercussions of the financial crisis, and that has simply just created a less dynamic labor market, and that means that it's harder to correct the gap between women and men. The second thing is we're at the beginning of the 4th industrial revolution, and so technology is causing changes to labor markets, which are having 2 impacts for women in particular. One, there are losses of jobs that are low to mid-skilled white-collar work that women are the majority in. So sales functions, administrative functions, women have been employed in those functions for a long time, and now those jobs are going to get automated away. The second thing is the growth in jobs. The growth is happening in those areas that women tend to not be very well prepared for in advanced economies, and that's STEM-related jobs, so science, technology, engineering, and math functions. And all of that together is basically leading to the stalling progress. We looked back at the last 11 years of progress and took that rate of change and said, well, if nothing else changed today, and if it was just the same rate of change over the next years, what would happen? And it would take another 170 years to close that economic gender gap. But this is not to say that it is guaranteed to be that way. I think that is an average that we're seeing because of the performance of a lot of different countries. There are definitely countries that are going to make much, much faster progress, and I think if we look towards them, there are some lessons to be learned as to how to do this faster. So the Nordic countries have not only made the investment in terms of the education gender gap, they've ensured that women and men are going to university in equal numbers. In fact, many more women coming out of universities in those countries, as well as many other advanced economies. They have also at the same time made it a sort of societal priority to ensure that there is a care infrastructure and that there is balance between women and men in the unpaid work so that there can be balance between women and men in paid work. We've come a long way when it comes to political empowerment. We started out very low, and it still is very low, but that is the area that has made the most progress over the last 10 years. So a 10 percentage point increase over 10 years is a pretty good rate of change. Some of it has to do with the fact that many large economies have female heads of state, but I think it's more than that. It is really because more women are going into parliamentary positions, more women are going into ministerial positions, and all of that is very important. It's beyond just who those people are. It's also who they represent and the kinds of decisions they take once they're in power. In nearly 100 countries, women make up the majority of those that are currently in university, and in most of those countries, that's actually been the pattern over the last decade. So what that means is, for most of the world, the young workforce is actually more skilled women than skilled men, and that is why it's such a paradox that we're not ensuring that those women are actually making it into decision-making positions and into the workforce. The health pillar is actually one where we look at basically just how many women, what the difference is between women and men's life expectancies, healthy life expectancies, if women are losing more years of healthy life than men, and then second, what is happening to the sex ratio at birth. And there are very large economies like India and China that have a continued problem when it comes to missing women, missing girls, because of a preference for sons. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of countries where because of obesity, because of chronic diseases, women are the ones that are living less than men. In particular, because of the situation in countries like India and China, we're actually moving backwards when it comes to health globally, but 96% of that gap has been closed, and so we're very close to parity. Well, one thing that's very clear is that you don't have to be a rich country to be able to close the gender gap. Gender equality is not a luxury good that only rich countries can afford to do. There are countries that are towards the bottom of the rankings that are making some of the fastest progress, and there are countries at the top of the rankings that are lower income countries. So for example, countries like South Africa, Philippines are doing extremely well because they've actually made gender equality a priority. So they might be low income countries, but they are ensuring that all of the resources and opportunities in that country are being equally distributed between women and men. The reverse also holds true, though. So there can be rich countries that are all the way towards the bottom. So Japan and Korea are high-income, advanced economies, but they are towards the bottom end of the rankings, and that is because they have not made it a priority to ensure that women are making it into the workforce. And that's something that is changing now. In Japan, in particular, womenomics is a key part of their growth strategy, and they're going to have to put that in place because they are also aging economies. So the fourth industrial revolution is leading to a rise of new possibilities, new opportunities when it comes to jobs, when it comes to new products, when it comes to new markets, when it comes to new services. And if women are not as prepared as men to be able to use those opportunities, then we could be seeing a world where there might be a widening gender gap, where you end up seeing men going into the new high-skilled, high-income professions and women getting ghettoized into the lower-income, lower-skilled professions. So that is why it is so important that women are also going into STEM professions, and at the same time ensure that men are also going into care-related work so that that balance can be addressed as well.